She's always overwhelmed by the forces of entropy, and she is, of course, at the mercy of the planets. So please put your hands together for Michelle T!
This is weird. I have to read into a satellite dish. I know, it's weird. I can't stand up and fidget. I'll have to sit down and fidget. Okay, this is a story, so sit tight. It's called Ecstasy. Mac had a hearse, and if I were to be perfectly honest with you, I would admit that was why I went out with him. He gave me stuff too: Cure albums, a necklace of silver bats linked wing to wing like paper dolls, a slew of Roman Catholic tchotchkes. Mac wasn't that cute, but he was older, and he was pretty authentically death rock. I mean, owning a hearse is a pretty big commitment to goth. It was long and black and somewhat round, kind of a cross between a limo and a station wagon. White lace granny curtains dangled in the windows, and if you concentrated your vision through the tiny weaves, you could make out the plywood coffin lying on the floor in the back. I was in a black lace dress with psychotic ruffles, dancing on the disco-smogged floor of Axis, flailing my floppy arms like a ghost in the dry ice. Axis used to be spit, back when I was too young to go to such places, and it was better then, punk, grimy. I knew that when I got bigger, I would go there and dance the way you dance to punk music, and it was a big ripoff that by the time I was old enough to start sneaking into clubs, they gave spit an attitude lift and named it Axis, and it wasn't tough and threatening anymore. It was snooty and arty, and everyone wore black clothes and smoked cloves, but they didn't really mean it. The place was full of posers. Axis, the pole stuck up the earth's ass, quipped Joe's, who'd been kicked out of the place so many times for smuggling in vodka that she had truly earned her bitterness. Still, we went to Axis. There was nowhere else to go. We went and smoked and drank our smuggled booze, poured into cokes in the bathroom, feeling superior to the fools who thought it was a cool place to be and were actually having fun. Mac asked me to dance. Actually, he sent a friend over in classic 5th grade fashion, though it didn't seem so much shy as arrogant, like Mac was some underworld boss, very important, and this boy was sent to deliver me to him. Me and Mac danced in the choking fog that sucked every bit of moisture from your body. We danced to a Eurythmics song, me kind of swaying and spinning in a way I hoped to look ethereal in my froofy lace dress. Mac doing a stiffer male version in a high-neck, long-sleeve black pirate shirt. Peter rushed out and grabbed me as I spun, hissed, "I saw him shopping at the Salvation Army, he has a hearse," and Mac and my fates were sealed. Mac's hair was thin and curly, receding swiftly into baldness, a tragedy for a subculture whose cheap aesthetic was a tangled thatch of endless hair. He used this terrible shampoo that stank like poison and was meant to bring his hair back, but it didn't. Ironically, the rest of Mac was thick with hair, another tragedy in a subculture whose beauty standard required skin pale and smooth as a sliver of bone. It's why he only wore those high-neck shirts to hide the patch of chest hair that crept kudzu-like towards his collarbone. But Mac compensated for this, with the hearse and with the bat tattooed on the inside of his wrist. He kept it covered with a wide band of leather, and that drove me crazy. I mean, hardly anyone had tattoos. They're illegal in Massachusetts, so you have to go all the way up to New Hampshire and brave the bikers and go through all that pain, and I didn't understand why he didn't show it off. I wanted everyone to know that my boyfriend had a tattoo, and a hearse. I loved riding around in it like queen of the underworld. Once Mac drove me to work, this dumpy grocery store in the slums of downtown Chelsea. I worked in the deli, illegally operating the shiny chrome meat slicer you had to be 18 to operate, slicing up liverwurst and head cheese for the sick people who ate such things, fielding questions about my hair, which was blue, and scooping mouse turds out of the potato salad. Once a mouse got stuck in a glue tray, just the tip of its tail, so it ran around like a little maniac mouse, trailing the clumsy tray, trying frantically to shake it. My boss cut it off, the tapered little tip of the tail, and set it free and bleeding out the back door, so it could find its way back in and ultimately get stuck in the glue and die a slow screaming mouse death. I got in a fistfight in the dairy aisle once. This boy grabbed my hair and I swung at him, and he pushed me into the milk case, and I jumped up screaming, grabbed 2 things of English muffins off the Thomas's display. One in each fist, I chased him swinging out of the store. When Mac dropped me off, it confirmed for my coworkers that I was hopelessly, satanically weird. "Who is that?" "That was my boyfriend," I said proudly. Mac. Mac was pretty full of shit, but in a melodramatic goth way I appreciated. He said he was a direct descendant of Vlad the Impaler, Dracula. He got really offended if you didn't believe him. It was such a cliche, such a predictable lie for a death rocker to attempt, that you almost had to believe him. Mac was Romanian. Certainly Vlad had descendants somewhere. Why not Mac? He said his brother was part of this cult that sliced holes in their scalp and stuffed rocks under the skin, and then used this special salve that healed it up. They were called rockheads, and they kept their heads shaved so you could enjoy the bumps and scars. Mac could only fall asleep with his arms crossed over his chest like a dead person. Me and Mac didn't go out long, but the repercussions stretched further into the future than I knew right then. 16 or 17, climbing coolly into the hearse. The interior smooth white leather like a coffin on wheels. Mac lived in Salem, of course he did, in a little gray room with a bed of black lace and curtains to match, a big rusty Sith hanging on the wall. Lots of antique crucifixes and candles and a shining brass candle snuffer. He had a photo album chock full of naked shots of his last girlfriend, who was disturbingly normal looking and blonde, with hefty tits, and I wondered, looking at it, did Mac go goth with a vengeance only recently, or was it that crappy phenomenon of punk boys who, even as they proclaim their alienation from and rejection of society, continue to chase cheerleaders? When you go on the pill, your tits will look like that too, he said in a voice that promised big plans for our relationship. I broke up with Mac. I couldn't have sex with him. I couldn't have sex with anyone. It was just too freaky. I slept at his house once, but by the time we hit the black lace bed, I was pretty drunk, and I couldn't remember what happened. Probably I touched his dick, and he touched my God, I just didn't have any names for it then, but probably I let Mac touch it, and perhaps he even had his mouth down there for a minute. The room was dark, lit only by a couple of Mac's candles. The craziest part is that years later, I got a real boyfriend who I was with for like 2 years, and he played bass in this band, and Mac was the singer. They were a good band, well, Purgisnacht. Dumb name, pretty unpronounceable. But the music was big, crashing death rock, and Mac commanded the stage in leather pants, crouching atop the monitors like a gargoyle, howling a low, round howl every bit as good as Peter Murphy. Mac and Ian, who was my boyfriend, had this really intense competitive relationship, both being Aries and sort of vain. When Ian found out I had dated Mac for like 2 seconds a million years ago, he went nutty. Ian had to know everything. He had to. We were in his apartment. He was an art student. He was on his futon, sulkily sculpting something out of a white glob of clay. Prince was playing. I was crying. It was a worst-case scenario of heterosexuality. Ian wanted to know all the details of Mac and I's lost night together. Most importantly, was Mac's dick bigger or smaller than Ian's? Oh, smaller, smaller, I assured him, as he pouted, disbelieving, prodding his clay ball angrily. Are you sure? Are you positive? Oh, I didn't know. Mac's dick could have been mammoth, the devil's phallus. All I remembered was the subsequent hangover and ride home in the hearse. But I understood it was my job to pamper Ian's ego, an organ considerably larger than his dick, which was, in all honesty, a fine size, but it had to be bigger than Mac's. I have a thin scar, faint, on my forearm, where I cut myself with an X-Acto knife as a blood promise to Ian that he was the winner. Me and Ian really had a terrible relationship, and it went on forever. Somewhere between its start and its finish came Juniper. She was Mac's girlfriend, and she was beautiful. The point of Mac was that he led up to Juniper. We were at a warehouse party in the South End, and there was Juniper, high on ecstasy, her eyes huge with it. A drug I had never done. A drug that makes you love people, that makes you want to touch them because it turns them so beautiful. A drug that siphons fluid from the tank of your spine. Juniper's eyes were black and swirly, and her smile was something luxurious. It was slow. It widened like a stealthily approaching predator. It spread across her face like water. Juniper's hair was a perfect shiny bob on her head, short and black like Louise Brooks, who she loved. She smudged dark eyeshadow around her eyes to accent how fucked up she was. She wore black slips stolen from Victoria's Secret where she worked, and funny little sandals, ugly really, but they looked exotic on her perfect feet. In the dark warehouse packed with smoke and people, I decided that I would fall in love with Juniper. It would be real and it would be tragic. Because we both had boyfriends, the restraint of their presence would only make it more beautiful. Juniper, 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 an artist, a painter. At this warehouse, our eyes locked as the cops crashed through the door and flipped the lights on. Oh shit, the DJ scurried to collect their equipment before it got confiscated. And like cockroaches, everyone scattered away from the keg, dropping their plastic beer cups. Clear it out, time to go, barked the cops in their humorless cop way, and Juniper was gone. Ian, Juniper, I said as we walked the late streets. Like a revelation. Juniper! I pulled on his arm like a kid asking for something. You see, me and Ian did girls together. We were teenage swingers. Unsurprisingly, his debilitating jealousy did not extend to other women, even as I confessed to him that probably I was a lesbian, and certainly he would be my last boyfriend, and undoubtedly I would leave him for a girl. Ian, Juniper. Juniper is Mac's girlfriend, Ian said wearily. So, I said, I don't care. I don't owe Mac any loyalty. I had adopted a position of hostility towards Mac to soothe Ian's ego, and it was serving me well. Mac would kill me, Ian said with simple drama. I mean it. He's crazy, you know, and he loves Juniper. He'd like stab me or something. Oh, Ian, I scoffed. Mac wouldn't stab you. You don't know him, Ian said darkly. He'd kill me. Juniper, I repeated. Mac was a small obstacle. I knew when Juniper's eyes snagged mine that we were our destiny. I willed myself in love with Juniper in that young way that enables you to truly, deeply love a person you do not know at all. I know about Juniper. She loved taking ecstasy, loved to look at herself in the mirror. Could you blame her? She was like the moon. She painted herself again and again. She was bisexual, score. Had that Victoria's Secret job. She lifted boxes in the warehouse, but still they made her wear heels. It was lush, wet summer like it gets in Boston, when the air fills with moisture that traps the pollution and drags it low in the sky like a sick sunset, and the newscaster tells you not to leave the house, not to breathe if you can help it. I kissed Juniper. I did. Ian had a party at his parents' house in Beverly, which was quaint and near the ocean. The parents were gone and the kids were blending daiquiris in the kitchen, using all the parents' appliances to get fucked up. Sometime after the sun rose, me and Juniper took a walk. What did we talk about? She had to buy her friend a birthday present, and I suggested Contempo casuals and then felt really dumb and trendy. Actually, I thought her friend was kind of dumb and trendy and would probably really like a gift from Contempo casuals. But Juniper was deep and mysterious. She'd melt like the Wicked Witch beneath the fluorescent lights of a mall. Actually, Juniper was more vain and elusive than she was deep and mysterious, but let's not shatter the dream so quickly. Right then, she was pure possibility. We were in this little alley behind a bingo hall. The morning air smelt like the stale cigarettes of 100 senior citizens seeping slowly out from the building. Juniper leaned against a fence and looked at me. Her eyes were enormous, wide and black, even when they weren't dilated. She looked at me and threw everything into my lap with the look. With her silence and her stares, Juniper controlled the whole thing, but I would have to be the one to do the work. I kissed her. I asked first. I had to draw it out, this tension she had strung with her careful quiet, let the words hang in the stale air, make her answer me. Because I didn't want this to be some straight girls drank too much at a party and giggle smooch. I had bigger plans for Juniper. I wanted her to break my heart, to bring me to the dark and painful place that was love and drop me off its cliff. I knew that love was a great and terrible thing, and all the best people nearly died of it, and I was anxious to be among them. I leaned into Juniper. I kissed her. She was really soft. I mean, compared to Ian. Ian was a big rectangle, angular, blocky. Juniper was a pillow, but a pillow I could break. I touched her softly, her little face, her hair all mussed up from the night, the shiny stuff she heaped on it worn away so it looked more like regular hair and less like a cap or a wig. She looked really tired. I finished my kiss and we walked back to Ian's, found our boyfriends, went to bed. So I had an affair with Juniper. Like an annoying little brother, Ian came along. It was the law of the land. Juniper lived in this tiny apartment on Park Drive, across from the Fenway Victory Gardens, where fags stalk and fuck in the tall, dry grass. At the edge of the park was a rose garden and a wall of lilac bushes. I picked a messy, tumbling bouquet of the purple flowers, my favorite. I tied the stems together with a hair ribbon, and I sat on the curb with Ronnie, drinking those Jack Daniels cooler drinks, Lynchburg lemonade in the little bottles, waiting for someone to leave Juniper's building so I could slip in and tie my florid package to her doorknob and run. In the orangey light of her window, I could see her moving in her slip, leaning out for a smoke. "There she is," I grabbed Ronnie dramatically. "Look!" Ronnie cackled. He was incredibly amused by my recent lesbian activity. "You're gonna do caningulus," he'd shriek. Ronnie had that fag fascination repulsion with female genitalia elevated to an absurd fourth grade extreme. Hanging out in a bookstore, he'd grab a book, say The Joy of Lesbian Sex, and he would run up and down the aisles, howling and chewing his fingers, the pages flapping. In Juniper's hallway, I tied my gift to her door, and the most crashing feelings crashed inside my chest. I could hear the faint tinkles of whatever esoteric death rock she was playing. Terribly, I wanted to knock on her door, but I knew that my secret flowers were more beautiful than any interaction we would have in her hall. I left. Me and Juniper had a date and we had sex. The night built up to it with slow jerks, like a cranky, overtired child, impatient. We drank vodka, ran around Boston, up Newbury Street, into doorways to kiss, the dark, empty fountains of the public gardens, the benches beneath the trees, back up to her loft with the candles in their glass, and the wind bringing to the windows the smell of all those flowers across the street. I wanted it to be romantic, and it was. At one point, I had to stop to tie my hair, which was long, back with a ribbon, and that was the part Juniper told Ian later, when she went to visit him at work. "It was beautiful," she said. "It was beautiful," I said. "That's what she said," he said. "It was perfect." It went on all summer. Me and Juniper. Ian and Juniper. I didn't like that at all, but if I had time alone with Juniper, then Ian had to too. Actually, I don't think they fucked. They made art. Me and Ian and Juniper together, well, at least I was there. That was good. But not as good as me and Juniper alone, all tangled up in each other. It was the summer Truth or Dare came out, and lesbian chic was upon us. I felt like I started it. Inspired, we played games of Truth or Dare that were big excuses for boys to kiss boys and girls to kiss girls, specifically for me and Juniper to kiss each other. "I don't want to play," huffed Ronnie one night. "You want to kiss Juniper? Go kiss Juniper." "Ronnie," I said. It was a secret. Matt couldn't know he'd beat up and murder Ian. They were still going out. He got a tattoo on his shoulder of a bat and a moon, and the moon's face was Juniper. Then Juniper got stressed out. She had to stop seeing us or stop seeing Mac. She took herself away for like a week, and all I had was Ian. "Ian, I love her," I wailed. Ian was annoyed. "I love her too," he said. "You do not." "Yes, I do," he shouted. "What do you mean I do not? You don't, Ian. You don't love Juniper. God, Ian was pathetic. Did he really think whatever little boy-girl feelings he had for Juniper were at all comparable to the immense and noble act of civil disobedience that was me and Juniper's affair? On the day of her decision, I was at my job in the publishing company, my stomach filled with nervous animals chewing up my insides. A fax came from Ian. It said, "We won." That's all, 2 words in magic marker, an alarm clock to jolt my sadly sleeping heart. Juniper. We went to her house, me and Ian. We all had sex. Ian would have me and Juniper kiss, and he would cry because it was so beautiful. Ian was an idiot. His hands on my clit were gigantic and clumsy like baseball mitts. I moved them away. Juniper took her hand, small and cool, and cupped my annoyed pussy. She just kept it there. Ian went nuts. How come she can touch you, but I can't? Ian, it just feels different. Forget it. We put our clothes on and left. Ian was furious. No more sex with Juniper. What? That's it, he stormed. Ian, I screamed. Ian, you can't do that, Ian! I did what I always did when arguments with Ian moved out of the sphere of the rational. I collapsed on the sidewalk and sobbed hysterically. Michelle, get up. I sobbed and sobbed. Michelle, get off the sidewalk. I sobbed until my body jerked in weird spasms, and my breathing turned scary. The last train came and went. People passed by, walking in huge arcs around my convulsing body. We had to sleep at Juniper's. We rang her bell shamefully. We missed the train. But you left hours ago, she said. I couldn't stop crying, I said, and burst into tears again. I don't know what's wrong with me, I lied. She does this all the time, Ian said. Maybe it's your birth control pills, Juniper suggested. Oh, I wanted to tell her all about it. All about how awful Ian was, how stupid and jealous, and how lousy it was to have sex with him, and how beautiful she was, how she glowed like the candles by her bedside, how I loved her and would never push her hand away. I laid in the futon with Ian and hiccuped all night. In the morning, Ian said we could still see Juniper. He had never intended to make us stop. He was punishing me. He loved her too, right? He made art about her, little papier-mâché heads with flapper hair and big made-up, fucked-up eyes. I wrote her poems. Together, the 3 of us went to Lollapalooza. The first one. Before Jane's Addiction got so tired, when you could still admit you liked them. We were going for Susie, that's why we were there. 9 Inch Nails was iffy, I was really sick of that tape. We slept out for tickets and were first in line, and then this crazy guy cut us. He just plopped a folding chair down in front of our blanket and said, "I'm first." A big guy, real obviously fucked up, thick Dorchester accent. "You are not," I snapped, ready for a fight. His knuckles were all cuts and scabs like he'd just been in one. A scalping agency was paying him bucks to get all the good seats he could. "I'm first," he repeated. "I'm getting the cops," I said, and those were the magic words because this guy had just gotten out of jail, was on parole, and had a gun in his bag. He didn't need the police. He moved to his honest second place in line, and we lived in fear for 12 hours. He was crazy. Wet brain. How much alcohol do you have to drink for that to happen? That's what happened to him. One minute he was nice, talking about getting us stolen TVs, and we'd say, "Cool." And he'd say, "Are you fucking with me? Do you want to die?" "No, Tony. No one's fucking with you. No one wants to die." He walked in front of buses and collected the insurance money. In the morning, it's true. In the morning, the record store opened and we bought our tickets. 3rd row, good seats, and we ran through the streets, sure that Tony was after us, but he was not. We had these excellent seats to Lollapalooza, and we figured we'd do Ecstasy. All of us. Juniper and Ronnie, who did it lots and loved it. Me and Ian, virgins. Also, this boy Ronnie was dating, Brian. He was beautiful to look at, but he had an evil gleam in his eye. There was something about him that was not kind, and it added to the type of good-looking he was. Brian knew where to get the ecstasy, somewhere in the South End. He took our money, $25 each, and ran into a brownstone and came back with drugs. I was only going to do half. With acid, I only ever did half, and it worked fine. I tripped so hard I was scared to imagine what would happen if I had eaten the whole thing. But no one wanted to split one with me. Juniper and Ronnie and Eric already had their established dosage, and Ian, the little thrill-seeker, wanted a whole one to himself. "Michelle, just do a whole one," Juniper pushed. Would my eyes swell up like hers? I couldn't wait to be filled with love and watch everyone turn beautiful. I had the chalky round tablet in my pocket, waiting to be eaten. Lollapalooza was at this big outdoor stadium in rural Massachusetts that was always kind of a strange place to see bands I liked. A lot of locals would go to the shows just for the fuck of it, or because their brother worked security, or maybe they knew one song. So there would be all these normal people, jocks, mom and dad looking people, burnouts. I went to see The Cure there and got made fun of for looking weird at a Cure concert. So Lollapalooza was even weirder, with Jane's Addiction so famous, and Ice-T was there in living color. There were lots of people who would maybe want to beat us up, but there were lots of freaks too. Thousands of people. We pushed through them to our excellent seats, established our presence, left to do our drugs. I bumped into this girl I knew from New York, this cute girl with a boyfriend who thought I was cute, a girl like me. We made plans to meet up later, and I would sneak her down to our excellent seats. I figured I would be high and make out with her. Who knows, maybe I'd make out with a few girls. I imagined the ecstasy would be like acid, which made everything so amazing, only I would want to make out a lot. Acid would made me want to have terrific adventures. With ecstasy, they would be romantic adventures. Me and Juniper went into the girls' room and locked ourselves in the stall, swallowed our drugs, made out. I figured I should eat some food then, before the drugs kicked in and killed my appetite. See, I try to be really responsible when I do drugs. I try to cover my bases before I lose touch with reality. The food at the concert was bad, of course, and cost too much. I got a hot dog and one of those big doughy pretzels. I was at the condiment stand that looked like a ketchup bomb had just exploded. I was squirting mustard on my food, and like a bottle at the back of my skull, the drug hit. Just as whoomph, like my brain was being sucked out of my head, the sensation flooded down my body, and I gripped the metal stand so I wouldn't fall over. It coursed through my blood like pure panic, that's what it felt like, and I thought, what did I just take? Then I thought, I've got to sit down. All my friends were sitting on the ground a few feet away. Very carefully, I navigated the sea of Lollapaloozers moving in all directions. I reached my friends. Very carefully, I sat down with my hot dog and pretzel and leaned against a chain link fence. Wow, you guys, it just hit me really strong. Talking was hard. My body was swimming inside, rolling over and over. Really, asked Juniper? We just took it. It shouldn't be starting so soon. Well, it is. I stared at my food. It was too bright. It looked gross. Is it nice? Juniper asked, excited. Her face was so big. It's kind of overwhelming. I don't think I can stand up. Just relax, she smiled. You'll love it. I tried to eat my food. I took a bite of my hot dog and chewed it forever. Swallowing was difficult. I couldn't find whatever muscles you use to swallow. Come on, Michelle. You swallow all the time. Just swallow it. The hot dog roll felt huge in my mouth. I got it down. I figured I would just eat the hot dog. I took it out of the bun, little bites, teeny bites. I chewed, tried to swallow, gagged. I kept gagging. I spit it out. It's okay, cooed Juniper. Her eyes were going swirly on me. You don't have to eat, it's okay. The roar of all the people was deafening. They were a swarming mass. I couldn't look at them. I realized that this was not going to be fun. The panic was not subsiding, it was growing, and I realized that this was only the beginning. I had just eaten the stuff. It hadn't even fully dissolved. More and more of it would be released into my bloodstream, and I would lose my mind. That's what would happen. I was an idiot. I took this drug I knew nothing about, a drug that affects your brain, and like a fool, I just ate it, and now I would go mad. I was overcome with grief. I was going to go crazy. And I was so smart, I had such a good brain. I loved to think. And these were the last thoughts I would ever have. I looked at my friends. I couldn't let them know I was freaking out. I didn't want them to freak out too. I knew how bad trips were contagious. It's just a bad trip, Michelle. I tried to talk to myself. I had never had one, but lots of my friends had had them, and they were all fine, and their brains were okay. But there was that one girl. What was her name? She did too much acid and saw demons with numbers for names crawling out of the sidewalk and had to go to the hospital, and they gave her some drug to counteract it. And she didn't see the demons anymore, but she knew they were there, and it was actually worse, since they could see her, but she couldn't see them. What if I ended up like her? I looked around. I couldn't see any demons, but the people hurt my eyes. I looked at Ian. He looked pretty freaked out. Juniper and Ronnie and Brian were laughing and looking around and laughing at all the private jokes drugs let you in on. They wanted to walk around. Go on, I said. I'll stay here. If I stayed in one place, I'd be safe. Everyone left but Ian. I feel really weird, he said. I do too, I said. I don't like it, but it's okay. It'll wear off. Just take it easy. I'm kind of freaking out, Ian said. I know. Me too. Let's just stay together and stay calm. Taking care of Ian was a nice distraction. It made me feel like I hadn't totally lost my mind. See, I could still think, but who would take care of me? I thought about going to the first aid station and telling them I did drugs and letting them do whatever with me. But the place was probably filled with tweakers. Forget it. I didn't need that. I thought about going out into the parking lot and finding Ian's car and lying down. I wanted to be alone. Being at Lollapalooza was about as far from solitude as you could get. Maybe we should go to our seats, Ian suggested. The concert would distract us. It was a terrible trip down to our excellent seats so close to the stage. We bumped into Juniper, high as a kite. How are you guys? We're going to sit down. Oh, you could tell she wanted to get away from us. We were bummers. Juniper, how long does this last? Oh, she rolled her giant eyes. About 12 hours. She was blissful. There is no fucking way I would stay in this state for 12 hours. I would kill myself. I would go to a hospital and get whatever drugs they gave the demon girl. Up on the stage, Ice-T was yelling at the audience. I say, what good is a beautiful girl if the bitch don't fuck? Oh no, he said it again. What good is a beautiful girl if the bitch don't fuck? Chanted frat row, the millions of white boys with baseball hats cheering Ice-T with their fists in the air over and over. Oh God, I wanted to die. Ice-T was evil. I was on drugs and he was the devil. I looked at Ian. That's not cool, he said uncomfortably. Duh, Ian. Nails was next. Trent was really fucked up throwing bottles into the audience, spitting at people. If I got hit with the bottle, I would lose it. Why was he doing that? What's his problem? I asked Ian, who was nodding off in the seat next to me. Are you sleeping? How can you sleep? I don't know. I'm really tired. Someone just told me that Ecstasy back then had heroin in it. Now, if I'm going to do heroin, I want to know. I want to do heroin, have the experience. Sure, fine. But I don't want a Mickey slipped into my Mickey at a giant rock show. On stage, Trent Reznor railed, "Maybe I'm all fucked up! Maybe I'm all fucked up!" "Yeah, maybe," I said bitterly. He dumped water all over the keyboards, and the keyboardist pushed them away angrily and stormed off the stage. What a baby. Living Colour was next. They were wonderful. They threw flowers at the audience. "Oh, I love them," I said. They made me happy. They just seemed really nice, and that singer was beautiful to look at. Susie canceled. Can you blame her? It must have been hell traveling around with all those imbeciles. Jane's Addiction were okay. Really grand, huge stage setup, and I didn't appreciate the half-naked blonde twins. I mean, I knew they were making a point, but I was still traumatized from Ice-T, and I just didn't need it. By the time the show ended, me and Ian felt a lot better. Things were still off, but the panic had subsided, and I was pretty sure I wasn't going to emerge from the experience brain dead. We met up with the druggies back in the parking lot. They had had the greatest time. Ronnie made out with all these boys, and who knew what Juniper had been up to? She seemed weird, distant, and kind of nervous. I got in an argument with her and with Brian about Ice-T being an asshole. They thought he was okay. Lots of women like that stuff, Brian said. So, I said. It was all I could think to say. They got a ride back to Boston with someone else. I was full of closeness and affection for Ian now, like we had gone through battle together. We were okay. I was really scared, I said. I thought I was going crazy. Me too, he said. We held hands. At some point, it started to pour, which sucked because the windshield wipers were broke. They moved to the center of the window and just stick there. I took off my bra, this tiny joke of a bra, cotton and elastic, and I tied it to one of the wipers and tugged them back and forth on the glass. For miles I did this, the rain pouring in the window, soaking me, but I didn't care. I had my brain back. I thought about all the most horrible things that could happen to a person. I could have no home. I could be locked up in a terrible prison, kidnapped, but as long as I had my mind, I would be okay. I tugged the bra and the wiper snapped off and flew away, trailing my underwear behind it. "Oh shit," said Ian. We drove home very carefully. Juniper never called us again. Fuck her, we unanimously decided. She was so stuck up anyway. She thought she was the coolest. She was shallow. I was tortured. She had cracked my heart like I prayed she would, and now I could be truly tragic. Why had she left me? Not even a call. All mine went unanswered. Was it because of Ice-T? Because I couldn't hold my drugs? I saw Juniper everywhere and nowhere. At an art gallery I passed every day, they had taken some of her work, enormous self-portraits, life-sized and real. They sat in the windows and looked at me. And she had gotten a job at a boutique on the same street and made up all the mannequins to look just like her. The big painted eyes, the sleek little bob. I saw her once at an abortion rights demonstration where everyone walked in a gigantic circle chanting and holding signs. We kept passing each other in the circle. It was so embarrassing. "Hi," she said sheepishly, and that was it. I hated the clothes I was wearing. If I'd known I was going to see her, I would have dressed a lot better.